Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, MMR.
Pat, if you could show me as spotlight, I'd appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. So happy that you're here this evening. We've got a great show lined up for you. I think you're really going to enjoy it, and we've got some surprises for you. I'd like to encourage you to join us again in the future and to tell your friends about us so that they can also benefit from our show. First, I'd like to introduce Father Ron Walters, who's the provincial minister of Our Lady of Guadalupe, Order of Friar Minor, to lead us in prayer. Father?
O God, as we express our creativity in creating in miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
Thank you, Father Ryan. I really appreciate your help and participation. We've got 3 of our team members that are still sick that I'm aware of. Ted Becker is still in the hospital. Chris Blackmar is out of the hospital, but still recuperating. And I just got today an email from Paul Thompson. Paul, as you know, was doing the bits and the quick tips for a long time on the show, and then he had to stop because of some health issues. And this is the current email and current condition of Paul that I want to share with you. Have had the first surgery on correcting my eye problem. While I suspect there are 2 more surgeries to go, there are times that drops, etc., keep me away from models and emails, etc. So he's just not able to communicate that well because of his eyesight. Also had tests to address a few other problems that you're aware of, but suffice to say, energy levels are way down right now. I'm hopeful for some resolution as I have 2 specialists I am seeing. Right now, I do not think I'll be in any shape to model or do any of your shows till at least the new year or some solutions are found. So I'd like to hold a moment of silence for our 3 team members that are just not able to be with us this evening because of their illnesses. So if you join me, please. Thank you. Wish Ted and Chris and Paul all the best and a quick return to our show because they've been such vital parts of it in the past and they are missed. Now I'd like to introduce a person who hasn't been on our show before, Burr Stewart. Burr Stewart, I'm happy to say, attended the Tacoma Narrow Gauge Convention and took a great video of that convention and is here this evening to tell us a little bit about what he saw and what he experienced and to show his video. So Burr, thanks so much for doing this. We really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I'm a member of a 13-person committee which organized this year's National Narrow Gauge Convention in Seattle. It was actually in Tacoma, Washington, which is like St. Paul and Minneapolis kind of thing. But if you're not familiar with it, this is a convention that happens every year in some city where people who want to put on the convention get together and organize a bid to host it. So next year the convention will be in Denver at this time, and I can't remember the following years, but it'll come up in the video. So we had a whole bunch of model railroaders here, about I think 400 to 500 that registered, which is pretty amazing considering the COVID situation and the expense of air travel. And I like to joke that Seattle is the only city in the United States that's where the next nearest city is at least 800 miles away. And that, you know, that would be San Francisco, followed by Salt Lake or something. So it's very different from the East Coast, where you can just get in a car and go to a different city. Anyway, I digress. At the end of the, I've been doing a lot of YouTube videos on my layout, so I've gotten really comfortable with making videos. And at the end of the or in the middle of the convention, I thought I should just take some shots of the convention and put it together in a video. So somehow this is what well, actually Phil was there, and I think, and he may have even come to my layout.
He was there every minute. He was there every minute.
I think he might have even been to my layout. But anyway, he suggested that we show the video that I put together. It's about 17 minutes. And I'd like to suggest if you have a barf bag handy that you might use on an airplane, you might need it for watching this video, because I kind of rush around the room and I sped up the video so I could cram it all into 17 minutes, because as you know, a 4-day convention, and you know, it's hard to cram that into 17 minutes. So I apologize for the craziness of this video. And someone has pointed out to me it would have been a lot better to show the contest entrance as a series of slides rather than what I did, which was to run around the room and just show it with my video. So with all that said, I think you can go ahead and roll it. If anybody has questions.
Did you miss the National Narrow Gauge Convention in Tacoma, Washington in 2022 over Labor Day weekend? Or did you attend it and just want to relive it? If so, this video is for you. This is Burr Stewart, and join me for a quick overview of all the things that went on, or at least some of the things that went on during the convention. For starters, we were welcomed at the registration desk by Janice and Barry Duplass. We'll see more of their layout in a minute. Next, we were welcomed by the Hangman Creek modular layout, one of the most spectacular ON3 layouts in the country. I would show you more video of this, but we don't have time. And they were at the exhibition hall selling their videos as well as kits for some of the wonderful features on this diorama.
I'm here for the vendor room. Are you a vendor?
Speaking of the vendor hall, Greg Wright and his volunteers did a great job of keeping people out of the hall until it opened at 6 p.m. on the first day. Hi, Dennis.
Welcome to the contest room. You can display models that you have handcrafted, photographs that you've taken. We have some wonderful models. If you need a form to fill out.
As you can see in here, Dennis Terpstra did a wonderful job of shepherding the entire contest room operation.
The models are going to be judged, and it's possible that you could win a plaque for first, second, or third place. And this is an exciting room. Each of these models is hand-built.
I'll show you a couple of photos of the winners in a minute, but check the next issue of the Narrow Gauge and Short Line Gazette for full photographs of all the winners.
Larger ones, the buildings.
This is a beautiful large-scale model.
You have to take notice of this garage. It is just outstanding how this is all put together.
Voters agreed with him, and this was one of the award winners. Dennis and I were both wowed by all of these contest models. I don't have time to show them to you in detail, but you can see the variety and wonderful qualities of these entries. The vendor room, also called the exhibition hall, by me anyway, was a lot of fun too, as well as expensive if you didn't keep track of what you were getting engrossed in. I think I got out of there for under $1,000. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. A lot of wonderful sales of estates and vendors, new vendors, old vendors. And there were 4 modular layouts here as well that were really fun to watch, and I even got to operate on one of them. That was this Moose Creek ON30 layout, quite nice and long setup, a typical Northwest logging line. And just as I was taking this video, along comes a train. How about that? In case you're feeling seasick from watching this video, I've sped most of it up at least 2 times for the rest of the video, so it goes by pretty fast. I don't have time to do much other than rush you around these modular layouts, but they were really good, all 4 of them. Remember, this is twice the speed the actual engine was going. A nice camper scene. Every logging railroad needs a woodpile. A water tank and a sawmill.
But everybody just coming off the street and going in the garage.
And then they wait their turn.
Well, Lynn was going in and out of the house.
Very nice.
And we may have to rearrange the...
Well, back on the showroom floor, we have a major tool vendor selling me and other people all kinds of tools we need badly.
I'll be right back there.
PBL, of course, was here in force. And this might be a good time to thank all of the vendors who participated in this year's show. We had both ESU and Tsunami soundtracks, San Juan with their new tank cars, and many other, too numerous to mention, but we appreciate every single one of you. As an HON3 modeler, I thought this was clever to put a coupler on the end of a module. And I thought I'd give you a nice aerial view of this long layout, which is called the Palisades.
Actually, it's that module.
I think
that was
this is
called
a famous
Palisades.
Alpine turntable inside this roundhouse. And look at this. Once again, we lucked out with the train. Again, remember, in real life, the locomotive was going half this speed. Quintessential Colorado narrow gauge mountain railroading. And now we see the modular layout called the Monson Railroad,
Monson and
based on the
Shapescott, I think it is.
2-foot narrow gauge lines in Maine. I was particularly fascinated by their open pit mine and came back to take pictures of it from several angles. Beautiful modeling. Here's an under-track cattle crossing. This particular scene here is very useful to understand the difference between standard gauge tracks that we have here and the narrow gauge over on the left. You can see how much narrower they are, the distance between the rails. This is 2-foot gauge. Well, back in the hotel, we had many presentations called clinics going on, and we just got a few pictures of some of our clinicians giving presentations to the attendees. We thank you all very much for these presentations. Well, if all that wasn't enough, we had over 30 layouts that were open to visitors during the 4 days of the convention. And I can't possibly do justice to all of the work that went into these layouts and how much fun people had visiting them, but I'll just show you a few clips from them. This is Dale Kreitzer's famous RGS layout, which had more than 200 visitors during the 4 days of the convention. And here we have a Heisler plugging away on Russ Segner's SN3 layout. Not to be outdone in the super detail arena, Tyler Whitcomb's N-scale layout was near the convention and was a marvel for everyone who saw it.
Tyler built this in just the last 6 years.
Just look at those cows.
I think he was in Model Railroader magazine a couple months ago.
I'm not normally one to be speechless, but in this case all I can say is bravo. This is Pacific Northwest logging railroading at its finest. I can't say the same for my videography, but you just had to be there to see this. Back at Barry Dupler's HON3 layout, he showed us how he did forced perspective with small trees in the back and big trees in the front,
that blocks the view from one to the other, and when you look at it, because of the tree
as well as a removable scenery piece
the small one, and so
that
forced perspective.
separates two scenes from his layout.
So I was trying to do that on this part of the layout,
It was kind of scary to watch that.
the illusion of distance. And so if you look over here, if you take this shot here, you can see how it looks like it's in the distance.
Barry is fundamentally a structure modeler, and the sawmill and the dual gauge portion of his layout, in my opinion, rivals the one by Jim Vail that's currently on display in the Sacramento Model Railroad Museum. On the other side of Lake Washington, on my own HON3 Empire, copper ore was being hauled by a Blackstone K27 across the trestle that I built over 50 years ago. These elk seem to have gotten used to the passing of frequent trains and remain indifferent. But what I really want to show you is that in preparation for the convention, Robin Peel, who was the chairman of the convention, also took time to scratch build a model of the Chama oil transfer platform for my interchange between the narrow gauge and the standard gauge. I couldn't talk him into entering it into the model contest, but I just wanted you to see it. It's a really beautiful thing. You can see from this picture that I have 3 of San Juan Car Company's new HON3 Conoco tank cars in service. Beautiful models. One thing I learned recently is that these Conoco tank cars were used in gasoline service to supply fuel dealers in the towns on the narrow gauge line, whereas the Gramps cars were used in oil service back and forth between Shama and Alamosa. So they never would have run in a train together like this. So we'll change that up for the future. What better way to transition to standard gauge than a Rio Grande passenger train, followed by a beautiful refinery model built in the last 6 years by Chuck Lee, who was located near the convention and got visited by a number of people. This HO standard gauge layout has some very nice modeling of the pipeline industry, which Chuck works in. There's a welder on the pipe, and of course here's a pipe layer.
There he is.
After all the excitement, we ended the convention with an ice cream social and got to meet up with old and new friends.
Aaron Murray, who's been helping with the tape.
And then, of course, the final awards and business meeting held on Sunday night. And as you can see, very well attended. Robin Peel emceed the meeting and started off with thanking everyone who was involved in putting the conference together, followed by the executive committee that organized the conference in Seattle, and then presented all of the awards with the help of Dennis Terpstra, who had been the contest room chair. I don't have time to present all the awards here, but I'll just give you the locomotive categories because, after all, model railroading is all about locomotives. And finally, the Best in Show award went to Brian Block for this amazing 1x1 foot diorama. Next was door prizes.
Next one is 175. 7211, 175.
Which was very exciting for those who won them, and nerve-wracking for the rest of us. And then there was the announcement of the future conventions. Next year will be Denver, followed by Pittsburgh in 2024, St. Louis in 25, and the Minneapolis area's bid for 26 was accepted by unanimous applause. And finally was the keynote address by Lynn Modiger on the restoration of the East Broadtop.
So essentially, East Broadtop, new beginnings. A group of people got together and basically swallowed the whole enchilada. So we got 30 miles of railroad and 6 steam locomotives.
This is a summary video, so I'll speed this up. This map shows the 30-mile extent of this ambitious project. And finally, Chairman Robin Peel closed the meeting and the entire 4-day conference on the premise that he had nothing more to say.
I don't have too much more to say, other than thank you for being here. It was a long struggle to get this going during the pandemic, and I really appreciate you all guys coming here as bad as everybody else. Travel safely. We'll see you in Denver next year.
And he received a very nice round of applause from the crowd.
We'll see you in Denver, and then in Pittsburgh, and then in St. Louis, and then in the Twin Cities. Thank you. Goodbye.
And with that, we all rushed off back to our merry lives. And as Robin said, we'll see you next year in Denver.
Well, Burr, I think you did a beautiful job. I really do appreciate you sharing it with us tonight. Does anybody have any questions for Burr?
I start out by saying Phil was going to throw up some of the actual slides of the winners while we're doing Q&A, so that can cycle on
Okay.
screen there. Do we have a question? While we're waiting for a question, I'll just say the thing that we were the happiest about was that we still haven't heard about anyone catching COVID as a result of the convention, and we did a lot of work to try to prevent that. So we didn't have any sit-down meals, and we a lot of us wore masks a lot of the time, and a number of the layout tour hosts had mask requirements, and there were no bus tours and so forth. So it was, that was one of our biggest concerns, that it would just end up being a disaster for some of the people that came. But anyway, we haven't heard of any problems like that so far.
Yeah, so Burr, just a comment. So this was the best in show.
Yeah.
And this was a pretty amazing, this is a square foot model. It shows up later as the square foot winner, but it had just an amazing amount of both detail and just quality modeling in it. So just pretty amazing.
What scale was that done in?
It was O scale.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this was a large scale engine.
Yeah, we had a question in the comments about the Mack logging truck, and I think that comes up too in your slides at some point.
Yeah, I hope so.
And another thing I heard the other day was that we've lost some very prominent and famous narrow gauge modelers here in the last few years. Paul Scholes and the guy who used to run Evergreen Scale Models, the founder, and several other people. And those were very much signature layouts for the Pacific Northwest, and those layouts are gone now. And we were very pleased that there were a number of new layouts that basically took their place, like that N scale layout that I showed you of Tyler Whitcomb's. He's a young guy. He and his wife have a young child, and he lives in a small house with a basement that's just right for an N scale layout. And that guy's modeling skills just don't quit. So anyway, we were
just
very happy. Yeah.
One comment on the last slide for you guys that, for those of you that are not kind of tuned into the narrow gauge community, it's a pretty amazing modeling community, even if you're not a narrow gauger, quite frankly, even if you go standard. So it's worth looking at the dates here, see if it's coming close to you, because if it's coming close enough that it's easy to get to, it'd be well worth stopping in it. Denver is obviously going to be great because it's Colorado, but Pittsburgh, I think, is also a great place to go to the narrow gauge convention at in 24. So it might be worth marking your calendar. Enough said.
Yeah, and we had, I think, over 50% of our layouts were standard gauge layouts that were on tour. So people were really in for a treat, even if they had no interest in narrow gauge per se.
Well, I think the interesting part about it is that this is a very loose leaf kind of operation. I mean, this is not an association. This is not a club. People get together in different cities and bid for the conventions, and it's all kind of voluntary. The group, like Burr was a member of out in Tacoma, they just get together and figure out who's going to do what, and they put a convention on. And that's how the narrow gauge convention is so different, in my opinion, from all the other conventions around, because it's always different. I mean, you're never going to see a cookie cutter kind of situation at the narrow gauge convention, because it's always different people that are in charge of figuring out what they want to do, how they want to do it, and when they want to do it. And I really think that's great that the hobby has that kind of volunteerism for that kind of a convention, Burr. So congratulations to you and your team.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That's well said. And I was going to say to you, if you'd like to put on one of these conventions, there's a bid opportunity right there on that chart for what's the next one that we don't have decided yet. So get a few
27.
friends together and you can make a bid.
Well, Burr, thanks so very much
Yeah.
for being here. And we're going to see Burr back early next year. We're going to see more of his layout and have him talk a little bit about what he does and how he does it and why he does it. And so, Burr, I look forward to that, and have a good weekend.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Talk to you.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's start our regular show with Mr. Gary Shurgold. Gary, I'm sorry. I just botch your name miserably every week. Shurgold, MMR, for his bits and pieces. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you very much, Jim. Okay, let's see if we can share screen and go to screen 2.
Between my introduction and Gary getting his show started, it's always a thrill.
Okay, can everyone see that?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
You're kidding.
Just me,
Here-
Gary. Yeah.
Here we go again.
Gary.
Okay, click on screen 2, which I just did. Come on. Go to screen 2, bring up slideshow. Come on.
You're not sharing screen, Gary.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thought I hit that. Let's try it again. Okay, share screen. Screen 2.
As I said, between my pronunciation of his name and his computer capabilities, it's always a thrill.
Well,
Okay,
you know,
can you see it now?
No.
I don't know what's going on. I'm share screen.
Let me come back to you, Gary.
Okay.
All right. You and Pat can talk quietly. And we'll
Don't get smart.
and we'll come back to you later.
We do this every week. I don't know what's going on.
Gary, this is Phil. Can I make a suggestion? Can you email? I'll put my email in the chat. Email me your slides and let me present them. Share them.
Okay, how would I do that?
No, don't worry about it. We'll talk later.
I'm going to the next segment, which is Motrax build along with Greg Cassidy. So Greg, yeah, Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. Gary, don't feel bad. I've gone through learning Zoom and teaching Zoom to others so many times. Every computer is different. So, okay. So I hope I have mine up and you should be seeing my.
Can you start, Greg? Can you start your video, please? Because I can't get Jim off.
My video?
You got to turn your camera on or we don't see you. We just see Jim.
Looks fine from here.
There you are.
I see what he's got up.
Yeah.
Okay, you're good now. You're good
Yeah,
now.
you just needed to spotlight me.
Right.
You're
Okay.
spotted.
Yep.
Your glasses are shiny.
If I take them off, I won't see what to read.
Moving right along at our speedy pace, guys.
All right, here we go. We're on week 3 of the Motrack models built along on new tracks. And we are building the Alton Fire Station, which is located in Alton Bay, New Hampshire. And I won't go over its history again. If you want to know about it, go see the previous shows. So in week 3, we'll be painting and assembling the windows. We'll be installing the windows and the shades and assembling the walls. Now, for the O scale and the S scale models, the windows are laser cut. For the HO ones, the windows and doors are Tishy, and in the N scale, it's a mixed bag. Some are laser cut and some are cast. These are the S scale laser cut windows since I'm building the S scale kit. Now, last week I showed you that I brush painted the front doors with a white paint. I didn't want to do that with the laser cut windows because brush painting fine items like this, you can get some paint buildup, and getting all of the edges and everything is difficult. So I used my airbrush to paint it. And you can see I had the door parts that were on this masked off because they're going to be painted red later. Now, once I had all the windows painted, I popped them all out. And if you're working with the laser cut windows, you'll have 3 parts like this. The window frame and the upper and lower sash. When you're putting these together, you want to make sure to align these 2 thin parts. Don't get this part upside down when you're putting it in there. It won't look right. And this is what it looks like when you have all 3 parts together. This is from the back. You have the lower sash, the upper sash, and the window frame. And this is from the front. And then, so once you have that oriented correctly, you can start putting them all together. I use canopy glue on this. It's a nice thin glue. You can just put a few little spots on with your toothpick, which I think is the best tool in the world. And put on some music and just put together a whole bunch of windows, and all of a sudden you're done. One of the nice things about putting together the laser cut windows is you can have them open to any extent you want. It's a little detail on this one. I had a couple of the windows open and the rest of them closed. Once I had all my windows put together, I used my wire brush to go over the wood just a little bit, give it some grain before I started staining them. And then once I had distressed all the wood, I got all my windows together and started staining them. This was just to make them look not like they were freshly painted. The fire station is not supposed to look like it's run down, but it doesn't take very long for something freshly painted to look just a little bit aged and weathered. Once that's done, we're going to start putting the acetate in the windows. I first went to the front doors of the building, and the piece of acetate was big enough that you could glue it onto the back of the door and it would look okay, but I wanted it to set down in the little opening right up against the mullions. So since it was too big for that, I used a scalpel for cutting it. And if you've never used a scalpel before, they're one of the best things in the world for slicing acetate, and they have a lot of other good uses as well. But I just took a little bit off the top and the end, and that way it nestled right down into the opening. And then I just used a little bit of liquid PSA and glued them in place. Then I turned to the main windows. And again, I used liquid PSA for this, and I'll show you why. So I got all of the pieces of acetate, and they were laser cut to fit both the upper and lower sashes of this, so I didn't have to do any cutting on them. And I just laid out my pieces, and then I'd put a few spots of the liquid PSA on the upper and lower sashes. And once you let the PSA dry for just a minute or two, then when you press the acetate on it, it doesn't squeeze out the way a liquid glue would if you would put liquid glue on it and then put the acetate on before it dried. And this way you avoid getting any type of glue squeezing out onto your glass. And I think I picked up this tip on the PSA from Bill Davis. So once I had all of my acetate glued into the windows, I moved on to the side door. And this door was supposed to be red. So I used my red paint and just dry brushed the frame, the inner part of the door, and the outer trim of the door. Once I had dry brushed them and it had dried, I glued the pieces together, and this shows you the inner and outer piece of the door. And then I put the glass or the acetate behind the door, again using the PSA. Now at this point you have all your windows ready to be put into the building. And for this I use canopy glue. You could use Elmer's or a tacky glue. I just run a bead around the inside of the window edge and then stick the window in. You want to make sure you get your windows right side up. I'm sure everyone's lived in a house that had double sash windows, and you know the upper one hangs out over the lower one. If you put them in upside down, people will point and laugh at you. So glue all your windows into the walls. And then I turned all the walls over and started putting in the window shades. Jeff had also supplied laser cut window shades in the kit. For some of them, I'd put them in full length, and for others, I'd cut a piece off so that it would be a shorter window shade. Usually you want to go with some variation in that. To glue them in, I just dip the top of the shade in a little bit of glue that I have on my glue palette and then stick it right on. That's all you need, and it'll hold it in place. And then to put the side door in, I first glued the frame onto the side wall. And then once it was dry, I got the door and glued it behind the frame in the opening. If you have the HO kit, I think you have a tissue door that glues in here. And this is the door glued in place. And then further along, I put a doorknob on it. So at this point, we have all of our windows and door in place. I have these doors sitting here. I wanted to make sure they fit, but they're not glued in place yet. So at this point, we're ready to assemble the walls. And as I had shown you before, I put together the inner and outer walls with the tab so that when we got to this point, I wasn't going to get any surprises about tabs not lining up. So for gluing the walls together, I just got some of my 1, 2, 3 blocks together, a square, and some tacky glue. I put the glue on the inside tabs like this, and then used a toothpick to just kind of even it out. I put a little bit on the edges of the outside tabs, but I didn't put it to where it might squeeze out. It is going to be covered by corner post, but still that's glue that I wouldn't have to scrape away. And then the tabs fit together, and I held down the sidewall with my weights and then glued the end wall to it. And this is the backside end wall. And I put a weight up against it to hold it against it, and then double checked it while it was drying in place. Then I come back and make sure that it's square once it's dried. I don't know what I could do at that point. I could probably move it if I had to, but I like to confirm that they are square. So then I came to glue the second side wall onto the back wall. This is our corner that's already glued, and this is the corner that's being glued. So I was holding this wall down, and I put the other end wall in place just to hold this upper wall up so it wouldn't be flopping a little bit. And that way I get a nice square joint here on this second corner. This way we have both of the side walls attached to the back wall. Now, for gluing the front wall in place, I could do the same thing, gluing one corner at a time, but I don't need to now. I can just put glue on both of the corners and glue it together with clamps, and that takes half as much time. And then at this point, we have a structure built. And, you know, this one is very strong. These tabs really hold it together well. And everything came out nice and square. And I think planning from gluing the inner and outer walls together at the start helped in this step. So the next thing is to glue the corner trim. And on the larger scales, it's a piece of angle strip wood. I believe in the smaller scales, it's just square strip wood. So I would put glue on the inside of my angle strip wood. And then I've got packages of hundreds of these little micro applicators, and they're perfect for things like this if you just want to spread that glue out some so that it covers all of your corner trim. And after I do that, I just stick it in my rinse water, rub it on a paper towel, and it's good to go again. I don't know how long these things will last, but I sure didn't need 100 of them. And this shows the corner trim glued in place. Now, once you have it there, you may need to do a little bit of sanding or trimming at the top or the bottom, depending on if you cut it before you put it in place. And then I'd come along and stain the corner trim. I didn't do it beforehand because I like to have it glued in place just so it won't introduce any type of warping to the wood. Now, one thing I ran into on this S-scale kit, the walls are just slightly short of the ends of the gables on the end walls. Now, once you put the roofs on, you're not going to notice that, but it does leave about 1/8 of an inch gap there. And I wanted to put an extension in there. The reason I wanted to do that is so I'd have a piece of wood that went all the way up to the roof. So I just cut a piece of strip wood to length, and it just happened to fit right in the little slot there. And then I put a bead of glue across the top of that wall and glued the strip wood in place. And it isn't needed for any appearance because you won't be able to see it once the roof's on. But I like having that extra attaching point where I can glue the roof onto the sidewall instead of just onto the end walls. It makes the whole structure a little bit stronger. And this structure is going to be handled a lot. So that has our walls all together. Next week, we're going to start shingling the roof. And remember, this kit has diamond cut shingles, which are a little different to work with than a lot of your square cut. We'll be painting the base that comes with it and then installing the roof on it. And so that's the end of week 3.
Anybody have any questions for Greg?
Not a question, Greg, but one of the things I do when I'm building a structure like that is I make L's. You made like the back L, I make a front L. And then they know that all 4 corners are square that way.
I do that with most of my kits. I didn't do it with this one because of that big opening on the front wall. Plus all these tabs went together pretty securely anyway.
Right.
But yeah, the majority of my kits, I make a couple L's too, and then put the 2 L's together.
Yep. Smart move.
Greg, thanks so very much.
Greg, it's very nice, by the way. You're doing a great job.
Yeah. Look forward to session 4 next week.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's go back to Mr. Gary Shurgold. I did it again, Gary, MMR, and see his bits and pieces for this evening. Gary?
Okay, we'll try again. Share screen. Go to screen 2. And can you see screen 2?
No.
Nice trestle.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much. How about now?
No.
Oh.
I don't know what's going on.
Did you go to the lower right and see the share again? Because you have to push share twice.
Oh, okay. I didn't do that. Share screen. Share.
Yeah,
There
How's
you go.
that?
There you go.
Here
Now you're
we
cooking.
go. Okay, now we know what's going on. Come on. There we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Well, folks, we made it tonight. Potential railroad components and everyday objects. What we're going to talk about tonight is on bits and pieces, is we're going to talk about stone walls. Now, I've been doing stone walls for a number of years, and as you can see, stone comes in different colors. So what I do when I do a stone wall, and I've been using this method for years, is I take 5 colors of paint. I don't know if you want to know the colors I use. You can use any colors you wish, but you number them 1 to 5. And what you do is you take your stone wall, you paint it gray. Then you take number 1 and randomly place those colors on that stone wall. Then you go to stone 2 or color 2, randomly the same thing all over the wall with the second color. and then your third color. And then we go with our fourth color. And last, we go with our fifth color. Now, as you can see, there's a number of gray stones still in here. So what I do is I start with number one again, and I lay down the number one color, not touching number one color anywhere else on the stone. And that'll leave you with your stones pretty much covered in different colors, plus a few grays here and there. And then what I do is I take some Hunterline shale and I put the shale over my finished product. And this is what I end up. It tones from here, tones everything down to here. And it's quite impressive, as you can see from the first photo I showed you. Now, this is another wall I had done on a kit, and there is no blending with the stain on this one. It came out fairly well and using the same method. Now, if you use this method, you'll have really nice stonework. It can be used on buildings, retaining walls, anything to do with stone. And that's bits and pieces for tonight, Jim.
Well, Gary, I'm impressed. I think that really is something. What was the stain that you put on it to tone it down? What was the name of it?
It's Hunterline shale.
Shale, okay.
Shale, S-H-A-L-E.
Boy, that really did.
Sorry, it's a grayish color stain, and what it does is when you put it on, it's very thin, and it blends everything. It takes that on this side. It's very high contrast. Now, some people like this to leave their rock this way, but what I like to do is tone it down, and as you can see, it blends everything in. It makes nice mortar lines, and then sort of takes away that sharp colors and blends it all in together.
Beautiful job. Thank you so very much, Gary.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Well, now I'd like to go to Earl Hackett. A couple of weeks ago, Earl finished the 3D design work on his 50-foot girder bridge. Well, tonight he's going to build the girder bridge that he printed out and show us how it finally came out. By now, hopefully, you've been able to print yours out or have it printed out. And I hope that that went well for you. I hope that you enjoyed that part of the presentation and had an opportunity to learn a little bit about what 3D design really entails and what it's all about. So Earl, I will turn it to you, sir. You're muted, Earl.
There, I'm not now. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Jim, assembly of one of these things is really not right, because when you print it, it's one piece. There isn't any assembly. You got the thing. So what I'm going to do is tonight, I want to go through some of the details of how you set this thing up in the printer. Setting them up, those supports that you have to be placed where they aren't going to interfere with things. I'm going to start off with a little PowerPoint thing I put together. Yeah. This is a model of the Wilmington, Delaware station. It was under construction when I took the photograph.
We're not seeing anything.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Gary can help you.
No, I'm sure he can. One sec. Okay. Share screen and share. There we go. Okay. Now I should be sharing the screen here. Okay. See that?
Yeah.
Good. This is I built this about 20 years ago. It's the Wilmington, Delaware station here, Pennsylvania. At the time, I was freelancing trains. I just built whatever I felt like building, and this is my hometown station, so I started working on it. And it took me about 3 months to put the drawings together. They were published in Mainline Modeler. And then it took me about a year to build the thing. And it came out all right. There's starting the installation and the layout. But eventually I decided I was going to go start modeling a prototype. And I chose a C&O because it's always been one of my favorite. They have some of my really nice locomotives that I like. So it went away to a guy up in Massachusetts. And it was done in what we call an old, it was done on an XP machine with ashlar vellum. It was one of the very first 3D CAD systems that came out. You couldn't there was no 3D printing at the time. And it was so limited, you couldn't do the 3D detail on the front. So all you could do was make lines to say, well, these are bricks and these are shingles, and you just had to put up with it. Well, sure has changed. This is the bridge, the way I printed it out. This is basically it. This is the default. I just let Schleicher just go do its thing, because it's really. You can see we have lots and lots of supports, and these supports are going to attach to the plate where the green thing. This is the metal plate attached to the metal plate where these green dots are, and they pull this thing up from the exposure frame. And as you can see, they're attached at various spots here. And once this is done, they go through what they call a slicing routine. And a slicing routine looks like this. This is what it's doing is slicing it into 0.02 of an inch thick layers. As it goes through these layers, it records each layer, and that's going to be an exposure frame. And that's what you're going to expose to make your 3D print. Here comes it comes at the very top of the bridge, and it's done. Okay. The problem you run into, go back over here. This is the frame just before you get to the bottom of the bridge. And as you can see, we have attachment points here and here. These are all the little attachment points that are going to pull that off of the FEP frame film. Is a fluoropolymer. These things don't stick very well to it, but you have to lift it. And when you lift it, resin flows underneath this film, and this film is only 0.02 of an inch thick. So it's very, very weak. And when you lift it, then the frame goes back down and it exposes it again. And this is the exposure you get on the next frame. This is the next image on that series. And as you can see, we've exposed it. That's the center plate, center reinforcing plate on the girder. When you lift that up, it's only 0.02 of an inch thick. So in the spots between the supports, it warps a little bit, it bends a little bit. And the problem, what it does, it doesn't really come out. And you can see here, I'm holding this just right in the light. You can see this, all the little spots that we're trying to hold it up. And it's a pretty ugly surface. It's really not at all presentable. That's the bottom of the bridge. And who cares? You can't see it. And that's the way I like to do it. I want to get that out of sight and out of mind. So if you wanted to have all surfaces reasonably clean, you could tell let the program automatically align the model, automatically position it. And when it's positioned like this, the only spot that has a problem is one little point down here. Everything else is a pretty clean surface, except where these supports tie in. In many cases, if it's a smooth surface, you could just sand them off and they go away. But here you have a board and batten siding. You can't necessarily get in there to sand these off. And they could be in a really difficult spot. The other problem is if you still just do it automatically, here I've put 3 handcar sheds on a platen. And so, okay, you go ahead, figure it out for me. And what it does, it tilts the whole doggone thing in a single piece. And so you have some of them way down here, some of them way up here. Tremendous waste of resin. So I tend to, I do all my alignments, setting up the alignments in the CAD system. And then, to tell you the truth, I very seldom tilt the thing. With the Leitzes, with the Illigu printers, there's a very specific angle at which you can set the printer to eliminate even the horizontal lines of the lines you see between layers. They call it the, each layer has a tiny little line that shows up, but at 15 degrees on the Saturn and 15.13 degrees on the Mars, those lines are obliterated. You get smooth surfaces. I've never had bothered with that, but I know one fellow over in Jersey that really gets excited about that. So there's couple ways you can set this thing up. This one I set up with so the supports are all on the bottom. And yes, all my surfaces here are going to be nice and clean. The only bad surfaces are going to be on the bottom, but getting these supports out of the interior of this thing was a nightmare. I had them braced and I couldn't get them out. I had to go in here with a screwdriver and a big chisel and a hammer and drive these things out of here. I got them out eventually, but it was not a pretty sight. If you go the other way, here we're putting all these little pock marks on the surface of the roof and on but I'm still on the back side of the doors and on the floor here. But these are surfaces that you can sand off very easily. And they're going to be a tar paper roof. Sand this off and paint it gray, and you don't have a problem. So the point is, you want to think carefully about how you're going to position the model for these supports. That is one of the more thoughtful parts you have to go through. This is that tower I showed you last week under construction, or the finished tower. And you can see we have supports inside here. They were a nightmare getting them out of there. It was awful, but it came out really well. This is a better illustration of it. But all along this surface here, this is the top. The roof comes down and covers this up, not a problem. And the floor covers up all the pock marks on the supports down here. And windows are similar. I like to make separate window frames and window sashes because I like, just like with that fire station model, I like to have them partially opened, various configurations, so that they it looks sort of like if it's a hot day in the summer, you want the windows open. They didn't have air conditioning back then. But in this case here, these are all gang printed in a one print job. Phone booths. This is another thing that you need lots of, are telephone booths. If you're modeling in the 50s or earlier, you didn't have radio. And so they had these phone booths all over the place. It's the only way the engine crews could communicate with the tower operators. And I need a lot of them. Another example of, here's a couple of, these are the default positions for supports with the Leitzes slicer. And I use two. One is the Leitzes slicer and the other is the, I'll remember the name in a minute. But This one here, it's not quite as uniform. It's not quite, but it does a reasonable job. Things come out okay, especially on something like this, because these cross braces here are self-supporting to a large extent. You don't really have to put a lot of support on those. The horizontal braces, they do need support because, and it supplies support to them. If you go to the, this guy here, the shoebox slicer, you can see it does a much more thorough. This is the same part, but it goes crazy with its supports. And you get much more supports, many more supports all over the place in the case of the shoebox. And you get more precise positioning of the components, but you get more little dings that you may have to remove. This is a Pogue water column that I built. This is the light sheet slicer version. And you can see down here, this is what they call bracing. They'll take adjacent columns and put diagonal bracing in between them. Makes for much stronger structure, but it also is much more difficult to remove if it's anything other than just a straight line like this, because the whole thing becomes one solid mass of support. This is the shoebox version of it. Again, lots more bracing, and just more stuff to remove, but it does a better job of it. I like them both, and in this case, this was about as good as you're going to get. I just accepted this when I was doing my prints, and it worked fine. Okay. This is the roof. I'm going to do a little bit of discussion about CAD systems. The Onshape is really intended for mechanical mechanisms. If you're going to build a V8 engine, you put all the parts together in Onshape, and you can run the thing, and you can make sure that all the parts move exactly where you want them to move. Then you can take all the parts apart, machine them, and build your engine. It's not optimum for building scale models. This one was a roof for that station. This is for the this is one I did for the station at Ronceverte, West Virginia. And you can see it has an angle here, comes down at one slope, and then it changes slope. And all these tiles here, this in my old XP machine, I couldn't have even attempted this because it didn't have the memory. The newer machines, memory is not a problem, and this is a close-up of the tiles. This is I guess it'd be an all asphalt tile roof. But on each tile, you have this surface here, you have a side here, here, and here, and then this little filler piece back in here, and you have a surface here. Each one of these pieces has 4 coordinates. Each coordinate has 3 points, 4 points defining it. Each point has 3 coordinates, X, Y, and Z. The memory requirements for building one of these things is huge, so you need a pretty high-powered machine to handle this kind of database. And fortunately today, machines are available that can do this that are not very expensive at all. Other things that I designed on this are with Rhino is this is a turntable drive, worm and gear inside here that I cast, metal parts that handle it, and it's a little different. I use a optical switch to control the polarity of the turntable tracks as it's spinning around, optical switch and a relay. This is a switch machine that I'm working on right now. I've torn my layout out. My layout is history, it's gone. I'm building a new one, and I'll show you why in a few moments. But I have a storage area, double-deck storage area that doesn't have room for switch machines hanging down below the upper deck. So they have to be off to the side with a long rod, push rod coming in. And so I've elected to use, this is the motor I have. These are motors from Micromark. They're switch tender motors. It's a gearhead motor. huge torque. Runs a double-threaded Acme, quarter-inch Acme screw here. All the other parts here will all be 3D printed. And it runs between two optical switches. It travels until it breaks this beam, then stops. And it'll also rotate a switch stand, which will be illuminated. Little lamp up here, which is illuminated green and red or yellow and red, depending on whether it's a yard or a mainline switch. You can also do very fine work. This is my chair that I sit in when I'm working on my models. And that's the roll top desk that I'm sitting in right now. They're installed in the switch tower. And this is the bunk house at Thurman, West Virginia for overnight cruise. And this will be the first building I built for that layout. And this is why I particularly like Rhino. I can do all this stuff. All this is done in Rhino. I can make artwork for brass etchings. I can make artwork for decals. And the thing that I really liked about it was I can do my track plans on it. This is a Thurman, West Virginia. I scaled it down to HO scale and put it in Rhino. And then I went and put dots on every so often along the tracks here and said, okay, Rhino, give me a circle, an arc through those points. It gives you the best fit arc. And from that, I get the center of that arc and I can lay out my other tracks. And this is my basement. I have 36 feet and it just fits, including the bridge across the New River. I like to build things. It's what I really enjoy in the hobby. And this is something that I've always wanted to do, but it was impossible until I had a decent CAD system and the ability to do 3D printing. There'll be a few models like these two water tanks right here. Those are kits that I have. They're sitting down in the basement. But everything else, I have drawings for all the buildings, every one of these buildings, thanks to the C&O Historical Society and the National Park Service, except for the Lafayette Hotel and the Armor plant here. I have 4 photographs of these two, and I'll work from those photographs to build them. But we'll be going down there in a couple of weeks, and I'll get exact measurements of the foundations that are still sitting there. So the thing about a CAD system is the interface. And I have a particular way I like to work. Everybody is a little bit different. Escape. I'm going to bring up I just want to show you what I work with. I'm going to go to new object, millimeters. This is the interface for Rhino. This is what I work in. I've been using it for I don't know how many years now. But let's make a sphere just for the heck of it. Sphere center radius. Okay, there. View. Shaded. I want to see this one shaded too. And you can run this around. It has all the functionality that you saw in Onshape, but it also can do planar drawings, as I show with the etching artwork and the decal work and my layout. That's all just lines on a flat sheet, just on the top view. So this is my do everything system. You can do a surface like that. Now let's there perspective. I don't know if that was flat. Oh yeah, that's flat. But let's go back to the four-way view. It also does very strange things. For example, let's do another surface. There, and here. I don't know what it is, but it can make it'll do very. It was designed for building ships and aircraft, so it does very exotic curved surfaces. I never use it, but I do find that it's useful for making rock walls. If you have a building with stone facing, you can make all the stones separate, and they're not copies. You can make a couple dozen stones, plop them down in random patterns, and it doesn't look like it's just a cookie cutter image. So this is just the way I like to work. It's not cheap. It's $1,000 for a permanent, but you only pay it once. It's a permanent license, and it's just what I like. There are other systems out there, and what you want to do is explore them, find one that you like, and go with that. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. There we are. Thank you. So if anybody has any questions or about what CAD systems in general, I'm always available for helping. I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm looking forward to a new layout right now.
I hope you'll come back and show it to us as you get it built, and not just wait until it's finished, but show us pictures and show how you're doing as you move along.
Yep. Right now, it's just I'm salvaging all the parts from the old layout, and that's going to make the platform all go very, very quickly. But what I'm really looking forward to is building that bridge. It's a girder bridge, not a girder bridge. It's a truss bridge, and it's quite a different truss bridge. So it all has to be scratch built, and that'll be all done on my printers.
Well, I look forward to seeing you when you get it done. And thanks so much for doing this, Earl. I think this has been very, very valuable for a lot of us to see really what's involved and how sophisticated the CAD design can come and be. And I do think it's part of the future of model building. And that's why I wanted somebody that's an expert in it to try to give us a flavor for what's involved and how to do it. So I can't thank you enough.
Oh, it's I was very pleased. I was very glad to do it. And what I'm doing is fairly complicated, but you start off with something simple like a little shed, and you work from there.
And like he said, you got any questions? You've got his email. He'll be glad to respond to you. Yep. So Earl, thanks again for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to Sylvan scale models, build along with Bill Davis, who is doing both the boxcar in HO and O scale. Bill, welcome.
Okay. Desktop, maybe. Desktop. Okay. All right. So we're going to do, mute myself. Okay, we're going to be doing part 3 of this. So in part 3, we're going to start with what's going on here? I'm going to start with the O scale version. Building the roof walk, doing the underframe brake gear, and the brake wheel assembly. So the roof walk, the kit provided a nice little casting for the roof walk. However, in the article by RMC by Ted, I can't pronounce his last name. Anyway, on Essential Freight Cars, these pictures appeared, and I was pretty impressed with the 4-board roof walk, so I built that. It was a challenge, but I got it built. So the first thing I did was cut the boards to cut pieces of 0.30 by 0.80 boards, which is going to be inch and a half by 4 inches. And I laid out 4 boards. And all I did was do some Scotch tape and tape them together. And then I, using epoxy, I glued them to the roof of the car. Oops, too many times. So the side pieces that go up to the roof walk, I used my chopper. Yes, it's a pretty old beat up chopper, but it's been around for about 35 years and it's done its job. So I just took a piece of tape and taped the block down here, and then I cut these pieces to length. These are also 0.30 by 80, and they're about 2 feet long. And then these are like 0.15 by about 0.60 brass strips, which I bent to support the roof walk approaches. So here are those strips there. I adjusted them and glued them with CA on here. And then I laid out a square setting here, and then put these 9 pieces that make up the approach to the roof walk here. And I drilled out for the nut bolt washers. And then I took and epoxied this and added the roof walks side pieces. So it looks like this at this point with the nut bolt washers added. So the end here was I found in my parts bin a little casting for here. So I put a casting in the end here. And pretty much that's the roof walk, except for the grab irons, which are right here. And they were bent out of 0.15 Tichy phosphorus brown wire. For some reason, the kit didn't contain any grab irons or roof walk grabs or anything like this. So I had to bend it all out of my own wire and not something provided by the kit. So that completed the roof walk. So next thing was the underframe. Now in this car, I decided to use the AB brake system. The AB brake system involves a lot more than the old KC system does, and we'll talk about that when we get to the HO car. So basically there's 3 components to the AB brake system. You have a split tank air reservoir, you've got a triple valve, and you got a cylinder. And then you got to plumb all these parts together. And on this particular car, this air tank is actually on the other side. The center seal would be here, and this would be on the other side of the car. So here's the completed plumbing. This was a plumber's nightmare to put all this in here, but it just was required to really make the car work. And then I used San Juan Car Shop's brake components for this, and also their clevises, and made my own. No, think about it. These are the ones that came with the kit. Did the chain to the brake wheel rod here, which was a little tricky, but that completed the underframe. The release valve here for the triple valve across to both sides of the car. And so basically that completes all the plumbing underneath here. Now there's a couple pieces here I noticed that cameras are really cruel. So I need to straighten these guys out a little bit. This one here and this one here. Just a little twisting with the old pliers will straighten that out. So this is the completed underframe now. Everything is done under that car except for the couplers, which won't go on until after we paint it. So the brake wheel end. This picture again has the really large brake wheel on top up here. I found one in my parts bin that was very similar. So I soldered that to a piece of wire and extended that down to the side of the car. I used very, very small 0.10 by 0.24 brass strip to bend up the supports for the brakeman step. And at the bottom down here, they had a casting for this, but I really felt it was oversized. And so I scratch built the casting. I scratch built the support for the brake wheel. I still have to add the chain here. And this was a casting out of my, to support the air hose. And there's just a casting out of my parts bin. So I've added a lot of extra details to this model in O scale to really bring it up to a fine scale model. Now the HO version was a little different and a lot more challenging. Doing brake rigging and things like that was more than I imagined. This kit, I used the provided casting from Sylvan. So this is a 3-board casting that is across the roof. Using that 010 by 024 brass strips, I made the supports for the approaches to the roof walk. And then I added the casting they had for the end here with 112 wire for this. The rest of the kit had they provided the grab irons and stuff, but unfortunately I lost those, so I had to make my own. Now, this is a KC brake system. You can see that it's a lot simpler than the AB system. It's simply a line coming across with a dirt collector and a cutoff cock, and it goes into the cylinder. There's a retaining valve line, and you're going to have your clevises. Now for the HO one, I was reading the article by Ted on the RMC issue, and he converted turnbuckles into clevises. I just happen to have a collection of HO turnbuckles, and why I don't know, but I just have to have them. And so I made these turnbuckles into clevises. It was pretty challenging because I only needed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I probably lost 20. But I also made my own levers here and mounts. Once again, I got to straighten this out here. Cameras are pretty cruel. I didn't put so far a retaining release line in. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to or not. We'll see how that works out. Got a few more things to finish up on these cars before we're ready for paint. And here's the completed underframe of the car. I added the KD couplers. And I had the space off just a little bit here, like the prototype, to be able to put the brake wheel support, the bottom down here, where the chain roller goes. And here's the brake wheel at the end. Here's the kit provided casting. You can see it's a little heavier than the one I used on the O scale model. This here is a call scale casting, as is this. The brake cylinder on this car was also a call scale casting. I need to add supports to the bottom of this, and maybe some chain here. And that pretty much takes care of the car, except for the ladders, which I will add next time, and we'll start painting next time. So as I said, next time we'll install the ladders and steps and start the painting process. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, this is Jeff Jordan. I heard you mention that a couple of times using epoxy. Are you using something like 5-minute epoxy? And do you find an advantage of using that as opposed to, say, a gel super glue?
The nice thing about epoxy is you've got time to move things around and shift them. Also, the plastic or the resin they use for this kit was really kind of strange. It's a lot different than most of the resin kits I've dealt with, and I found the epoxy worked pretty well with it. But the nicest thing about it is, pretty much when you lay down with CA, you best be right the first time. And so I like that from that standpoint. It gives a little thing. I don't go to the hardware store to get my epoxy. Here in Raleigh, there's a place called Hangar 18, and they sell epoxy, and it comes in a bottle. It's about 3 inches tall, and about, I don't know, inch in diameter, and I've been using it for a really long time. And it's what's nice about it is, you buy the 5 minute, you got the gun thing, and you kind of squeeze out so much you need. This, you squeeze out your own amount. But I find epoxy is very handy and stuff. Anything else, guys?
On the O scale, or any of the kits, I guess, did you prep the castings first?
When you say prep, as in washing them and stuff like this?
Washing them, and Sylvan in the early years, he used to have his own solvent or something for cleaning the stuff off when it came out of the mold.
I didn't use his stuff. I just used basically Dove and our kitchen sink. Don't tell my wife.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, other than that, no, and yes, it makes a big difference because a few things I started before I cleaned it up, and I found that even the epoxy didn't like it until I got this stuff off there.
Bill, I got a question for you. Doing underbody detail on a freight car is just scary to a lot of people. Is there a secret for you? I mean, how do you begin that process?
Well, at first I printed out the instructions for an AB brake system and a K brake system, but I've been doing underbody brake work since the 70s, and it's just something that I really like seeing on the bottom of a car. It's not difficult, but it does require that you do a little bit of getting things in between things and planning out which wire goes where, when. Like, I wouldn't have put the from the triple valve to the cylinder was the last wire I put in because I had a bunch of wires underneath. And so you just got to kind of plan out where your wires are going and just bend them accordingly. And the bigger thing is, don't be afraid to do it more than one time. There's several pieces there that got bent more than once and went, whoop, that one doesn't work. Throw that piece of wire away and stuff. And the next piece and stuff. But I love all that kind of detail, all that kind of, one of the reasons I model an O scale is, besides my history of it, of meeting the right people at the right time back in the early 60s who were into O scale. But the thing I really like about O scale more than anything else is you can really put the detail on. And that's my interest in the hobby. I'm not much for running trains or anything like that. I do go to my friend's house like I did today and run part of his layout, but that's not my interest. My interest is model building. And so when I build a model, I want to put as much detail and much of anything I can on it to make it as correct as possible.
Thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate it. I might mention shortly, in a few weeks, Bill's going to be our guest star on our new show, Modeling Lifestyle. Three of his friends and Bill are going to be joining us. And I think that's going to be quite an evening to hear some of his secrets and some of his tales about his career in modeling. And I'm looking forward to that, Bill.
Well, I don't know if star is the right word, but we'll see how it goes. All right, guys. Next time, like I said, we'll start doing the bladders and we'll start doing the painting process.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Okay.
Now I'd like to turn to our My Bill for the month. This is something that we do once a month. It's very special to me because I really believe seeing what other people have built and having them talk about it really is a stimulant for all of us. So Greg Cassidy is replacing Chris Course tonight. Chris got called to work and he's not going to be available. But before Greg starts, I want to run our sponsors video, Dan Darty and Amy Darty on Monson Railroad Resource LLC, and they are our sponsor for this series. So Pat, if we could run that video, please.
Welcome to the world of scale, O&S railroading. We are your resource for all O&S scale modeling. Both our magazines are advertiser supported and free to read online, download as a PDF, or even print. All advertisers are hot linked to their website, so if you see something you like, just click. check out our websites for the current issues. All back issues available free for the O-Scale Resource and the S-Scale Resource magazines. And, if you are a manufacturer, distributor, or retail establishment, please contact us through our website for advertising opportunities.
And the philosophy of both of those magazines is bringing modeling back into model railroading. So it's a perfect match for our my build, in my opinion. And I really do appreciate Amy and Dan being the sponsors for this segment. So Greg, I will now turn it over to you, sir, and I appreciate you filling in for Chris tonight.
All right, Jim, I'm happy to do it. Chris got pulled on some duty of flying some people somewhere again, and sometimes he just can't get out of it. So welcome to my build. This is the one for September. This my build is featuring you, and the next my build will be in October. I guess Chris didn't have the date. So it's hosted by me. He put these slides together. I know everyone is here except for one person when we get to him. So our first modeler up is Ed Cady. Ed, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Why don't you tell us about your bridges?
All right. Well, actually, if you go to the first, your first slide, to where it says the beginning of your slideshow. Yeah, keep on going, all the way to the beginning.
Up here.
Yes.
See this one down here.
Yes, that is the lower. That's sort of like the first time you saw the bridge, without. Pretty much not that much scenery. It's basically the scenery was just a paint of brown paint. But now if you go back to the other slide, now you can see where I've added rocks. I've been making small little dioramas, mainly because I'm not very confident in my scenery skills yet, so I'm making small little dioramas before I actually add it to the actual layout, which actually it's sort of peeking in the background a little bit. And basically, what I wound up using was I wound up buying a Woodland Scenics mountain kit. I was actually looking for the river kit, but they didn't have the place I was at didn't have that, so I bought the mountain kit, and so that's where the green turf came from. The little the gray rocks, the buff or tan blocks are actually from an aquarium kit, and then I also wound up using buff ballast for the regular stuff and all that. And here's more pictures. The lower picture is actually the back end of the scene. That's why you can see the top Romaine, not sponsored, in the background and all that. But I'm not fully happy with it, but it's one of those things. That's why I'm building these dioramas, so I, eventually will like to see exactly what actually happens with it. And then here's some more pictures. Now, for eagle-eye viewers of and longtime viewers of this show will recognize the Conguino models, boxcars and flat cars.
And I know you're modeling what, the 1870s, 1860s?
Originally, when I started this, it was the 1870s. And then about back in July, somebody was doing a thing on bicentennial. So I'm like, wait, the centennial fits right in the 1970s. So I'm pretty much trying to. My time frame now is basically the centennial.
Okay, yeah, which I expect means you have to make a lot of your own stuff that you can't find commercially.
That is correct. And speaking of not making things that are not available commercially, the bridge is a Hunter Line Queen Post bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is I haven't added grass on this. This is not fully finished yet. But one of the interesting things is that in the instructions of the bridge, they also have the instructions for the narrow gauge bridge. Interestingly, the narrow gauge bridge is an actual standard gauge. The standard gauge bridge that they have, like that I got, is actually widened a bit for the NMRA gauge.
Oh,
NMRA's classes. So it's actually a broad gauge bridge.
Huh.
So what I wound up doing, if you look at it, well, I mean, I can look at it here. I can look at it here, and sort of, it's pretty obvious that it's wider than standard gauge. It's actually 6 foot gauge.
Wow.
So it's HOW6 or HOB6. I'm not quite sure what the terminology is for it. But the interesting thing is that the guardrails are actually standard gauge.
Huh.
So I'm assuming there's more pictures, one with locomotive
Yes.
on the bridge.
Sorry.
Yes. Now,
I was going to ask how it looks with your locomotives going over it.
Yes. Well, the thing is, if you notice, if you look really closely, the locomotive's on the guardrails. It's not on the actual 6 foot gauge.
Ah.
Now, the interesting thing is, from what I understand with this particular model, this is an old Tyco model, but it's not HO scale. It's, I think, 176 scale. So it's a little bit larger, but the thing is, a broad gauge locomotive would be larger. It's actually, if you put a scale ruler across it, it actually comes out to be 11 foot wide. That's why when you put this locomotive next to a standard, an HO scale model, it looks too large because it is too large. So my idea on the locomotive is to find some way to. I actually wound up buying a lathe so I can actually turn around and broaden the wheel sets on it so it actually fit the 6 foot gauge. And another thing is, I think I have to lower the cab and possibly make the tender a little bit shorter. But keeping the length. But that's
so you have a lot of metalworking in your future.
Yeah, I got to learn how to do that first before I can do that, or before I can build stuff and all that. But right now, I just wanted to see about getting the learning on how to do the tracks first. The track is also code 55 because of code 100. I mean, even looks oversized for mainline stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, and when you're dealing in your period, probably code 55 is the biggest they would be using then.
Yes, and also, it's a fun fact, it seems that's also the same code 55 is also used in N scale. So was able to use, I think on this one I actually used N scale track, removed the ties, and then I actually made a 6 foot gauge out of a tongue depressor to making sure that it's gauged correctly. But that's one of those things of there's no standard broad gauge in the United States as far probably I would think of.
Okay, Ed, before I open it to other questions, this one is a Hunter Line bridge. What about this one? Did you build this from scratch, or is this a kit?
No, that's the Hunter Line Line trestle. Okay. Not the post one, the squared one. I actually this trestle I actually followed when they were Marine was putting it together and all that. The Queen Post Bridge was I built that the same time they were doing the King Post Bridge, but I wanted something a little bit wider or a little bit longer than the King Post, so I went with the Queen Post instead, but followed the instructions.
Yeah,
And,
well, you don't want your locomotive in the river, of course.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Do we have any questions for Ed?
Well, actually, if you back up one, I think, yeah, if you back up, no, two, or correction, three. All right. If you look on the top picture, behind the cars, you can see the part of the covered bridge that I did that for some reason my phone did not send to Chris, so that's what it's going to be. That's going to be for the next my build.
Okay. And that's the Hunter line also. That's the one they just finished, right?
That's the one they just finished, and I made it so it was more one with a removable roof on it, because all these models are actually not really attached to the diorama, mainly because I want to be able to take them out and put them on. If I wind up having a layout where I can put them on there, I can turn around and put them on the layouts.
Nice.
And I think Daryl Jacob in the chat has put down probably 6 foot gauge, and he is correct. And the interesting thing is HO scale, 6 foot gauge HO scale is sort of like SN3 with HO gauge, where it doesn't quite fit. SN3 does not quite fit HO scale track. The HOW6 or 6 foot gauge is 1 millimeter short of S gauge.
Wow.
What wouldn't quite fit.
And that's just here in the United States. If we started throwing in TT and other things.
Yes. Well, and the interesting thing is that I did find out that there is the broad gauge society that does broad gauge stuff. However, it's the Burnell 7 foot gauge. Over in England.
Wow.
But yeah, if anyone has any questions, I mean, I'll do my best to answer them. I'll even sneak over.
All right. Well, thanks, Ed, and I look forward to seeing the covered bridge next month.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Next up, we have Martin Brickville. Martin, hello. I know you're here.
Yeah.
And you were right. You have 2 vehicles in this one.
Yeah, I was expecting this one second, but we'll go first. Well, it doesn't matter.
It's all relative.
Yeah. Let's not get quantum physics involved in this yet. This is something I have not built, actually. This is something that was handed to me a couple of years ago, as a reward for helping price out an estate. But I saw this in the one box of stuff, and there were many, 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 many boxes of stuff. And I spotted it and picked it up, and I said, I don't believe it. It's one of these. And the guy I was doing this for said, well, here, you take this. And I thought, wow. And what this is a coal hopper motor trolley. It's a trolley car for hauling coal. And this one actually has a prototype. So this is, I recognize this from the picture in the book. There's a book called Not Only Passengers. It's one of the CERA trolley books. I don't remember what number, 129 or something like that, plus or minus 30. But there's actually a picture of this car in there. And the prototype is from the Androscoggin and Kennebec Railway. And this is actually it looks a little crude, but in real life, these cars were kind of crude. They were apparently built locally. I don't think anybody actually designed and built these things for them. And they had at least two and probably three. I found pictures of two different ones. I think it's 652 and 654. Not that I think that they actually had 600 pieces of equipment, but those were the two numbers. So there's probably one. 653 is probably the one that's in between that I haven't found a picture of. So I have a lot of work to do on this car. Obviously, there's no trucks. There's no poles. There's a lot of details missing on the sides. The ends aren't quite right. That curved piece, the prototype actually did not have a radial coupler curved piece on the front of it. So that all comes off. The doors are missing. The windows are missing. So those are going to be fun on the side. There's a door on each side. There's a window on each side. And there's no hatch or anything on the bottom. The coal had to get dropped out of it somehow. So I have no pictures of that. So that's going to be a complete fabrication on my part out of fantasy, but I think should go there. What is not underneath of it are all the, there we go. There's the pictures. There's nothing underneath there at the moment. In fact, there's some scars where the bolsters were inset into the body. So I'm going to have to repair and rebuild the entire underbody to work with it. One coupler, well, that's going to go away. That little machine screw on the one side is actually holding a compressor casting. That's going to come out temporarily at least. So all the underbody parts you normally see on trolley cars, they're going to have to go somewhere behind the cab underneath the slope sheets of the hopper. I have no idea what goes in there. There's also some mechanisms in there. The one photo I found, you can see some gearing and a latch of some sort that probably operates the hatch. So there's probably some mechanism, levers, gears, wires, jiggery pokery, whatever you have you operating that, which I'm going to ignore because I don't know what it looks like and I don't know where it goes. And I'm betting nobody else does either. The rest of it looks pretty much correct. So
it looks like a project right up your alley, Martin.
Well, it's going to be a project. It's going to be 3 or 4 issues of Scale Trains magazine in my column next year. So we'll be back next year to look at that. Oh gosh, there's the other one. A wooden covered hopper, which I built merely out of whimsy. I just felt like doing it. This is what happens when you have space on your bench and too many 3x9s laying around in a bundle and some other odds and ends. So if you're not careful, the demons creep out and say, "Oh, just build this for fun. You'll like it." And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of individual boards. There's some scribe siding on the roof, but all the rest of it are individual boards. And there's a full underbody underneath it somewhere. And I think, there's the hatches. I'm going to probably steal those hatches and put them underneath the coal hopper or something to that effect. So those are built out of all kinds of little pieces of angles and Z's and channels and hinges from other hopper cars. But again, just something to do that's fun. And I think this is back around April when I was in a frenzy doing something or other and decided, well, I don't have enough on my bench. Let's do 3 other cars at the same time. That's almost normal. But, if you're not building something, I mean, there's something wrong. So I think that's where I am this month. I don't know if there's any more.
So that
slides.
old saying of no project is ever completely done. When you take these hatches off of this car to put on the motor trolley, you'll need more hatches on this car.
No, I'm not going to physically transfer them off of this. I'll just make a copy. I'll just pull this car out, flip it over and say, "Oh, that looks good. Let's do something like that." It's easier just to make another one. And I have all the parts. It's just styrene and hinge castings and some other odds and ends. The hatches on the roof, they're just some of my own resin castings anyhow. So, I mean, I have the parts laying around. I think maybe a third of what I do in building is just to use up all the parts that are laying around, just to get them out of the way. And then I go and then I break out 2 pounds of resin and make 2 pounds of parts.
It keeps you busy. Do we have any questions for Martin on either of these?
Martin, quick question.
Yes.
The doors there appear to drop across the tracks.
Yeah.
Would there be any mileage converting them to a side mount door?
Yep.
So the doors actually drop down parallel with the tracks, and you dump your load that way.
Could do that.
Okay.
I was looking at a wooden hopper that had side doors underneath of it at one point, thinking there's a fun project to get involved with someday. So, winter is coming. I'll build another 20 or 30 cars between April next year. So, it's only a mild amount of hyperbole involved there, because my wife came down and helped me sort out the boxes of cars, because I ran out of 4x4 by 12 inch boxes, and I buy them 50 at a time. And I have all the shorter cars will go in the 4x4 by 10 inch. So we're sorting everything out and pulling, the short cars out, put them in the short boxes. And then I have room for, I have 12 inch boxes for the larger cars. And we got done, and I've got about, let's see, there's about 90 boxes on the floor behind me on the other side of my table. So that's the last year's exercise in building.
Okay.
The year's not over. I've got another hopper car on the one bench right now, and a badly damaged, I think it's a Glorcraft Penzi cabin car, which will be completely unrecognizable by the time I get done with it.
Uh-huh.
Martin, you never sleep.
Less
So
than
Martin, do you take these to shows and sell them, or do you just use them as your stock?
I'd say a third of them disappear to shows. I have serious separation anxiety at times. It depends how much I've actually put into something. If I've put an awful lot into it, I've built it stick by stick from the ground up, it's sometimes hard to let go of it. Those things that aren't so involved, they can probably go away. And they do. I mean, eventually I pull things off the shelf and off the floor and say, yeah, I can do without that. So, the Strasbourg O-Scale meet's showing up in, let's see, it's on the 15th of October. So I'll probably fill an extra tub of stuff that I've decided that it can all find a new home. And most of the time it does, but some of it comes back. It can't find a new home some days.
All right, thanks, Martin. Tony Dixon, you are up next.
All right.
Hi,
sorry,
Tony.
no video tonight. So this is a modified wooden grain elevator kit that I've been working on for a customer. It'll be on his National Farm Toy Show display. The main wood house is an S-scale kit. I can't remember the company right now, and the box isn't in front of me. And then the brick portion is all scratch built.
Ah.
And then just some additional details in the dump pit area that are not part of the kit.
And so
sliding
this is,
doors and controls and all that good stuff.
tell me more what this is going to go on.
I have a customer that competes at the National Farm Toy Show in Dyersville, Iowa, the first weekend in November. And he is doing a display that will be a grain elevator complex that this and the mill that I previously showed and a few other structures will all be part of. And he'll actually have some track on this one. It'll be the first one he's done with any railroad track on it. And it'll have, actual S-scale track on it. And it's just going to represent a modern Oklahoma grain elevator complex when it's all said and done.
So this part we see here would be where a truck would pull in, I guess, and dump it.
Correct.
Dump its grain.
Correct. This is the alleyway on the
Very nice.
on the truck unload side. And it has the control box in it for running the elevator and stuff without having to step in the alleyway where the door is. And then the other box with what looks like wires coming out are actually cables. And that's to change the location to where the grain is going in the elevator itself. It goes in the dump pit, goes into a elevator up to the head house, which is the tallest portion of the building. And it has a distributor underneath with a swing gate, and the yellow control seen to the right in the upper right hand picture is basically a big hand crank with a cable coming out each side of it, and you step on a foot pedal on the floor to unlock it, and which the cable runs all the way up into the building to unlock it, and you crank that until it's in the position according to the indicator on which bin or conveyor it's being dumped into, and you release it and lock it in, and that's how it makes the grain go to where it goes. And after 20 plus years of working on this stuff in real life, it comes in handy when building it to scale.
The brick part that you scratch built, what did you build that out of?
It is a 060 styrene core coated with or covered with a layer of JTT Plastics HO scale brick, which happens to scale out properly for S scale if you measure the physical brick on the pattern. And then the sliding doors are evergreen plastics, I believe 0100 spacing V-groove siding. The roof is evergreen plastics, 0100 spacing corrugated steel. And then the walk door on it actually came with a Woodhouse kit, but it's a Grant line door. While the other doors on the Woodhouse kit, the walk door that you see on the lower portion where the truck dump is one that I designed and 3D printed. And then there's on the side view, which I don't believe I took a picture of. Yeah, you don't see, it's just out of the frame off the lower right-hand photo. There's another walk door that I 3D printed.
That's very nice. And so in S-scale, how big is this overall, would you say?
It is 14.5 inches long, and I think just over 9 inches from the rail side to the edge of the dump pit. The main head house portion is 5 7/8 inch square, and 13.5 inches to the peak.
All right, very nice. Do we have any questions for Tony about this?
Thanks so much, Tony. That really is a great looking model. We appreciate you showing it to us.
Yeah, and I know your friend's going to appreciate it. Hope he does well.
Yep.
All right, next up we have Phil. Phil, you there?
I sure am.
All right. And we've got a bunch of slides of your, I don't know if they're all of the pier or if he has more than.
It's actually not the pier. It's actually the building on the pier.
Okay.
So the pier is still under construction, et cetera. And I'll come back because I actually didn't put in the picture of the prototype. So when I started building this wharf, I concluded that I needed something beyond just, there's a basically a cannery fishery to the right of this, you can't see. And I came across some pictures of the Standard Oil Pier in Monterey. And so basically there were a couple of piers that stuck out from the main pier. I actually got an aerial photo that kind of shows them. And they were piers where the fishing boats went to get gas. Turns out that when there was an Italian, or all a big Italian community, they were all from Sicily. When they came in, when they did a family outing on the boat, they brought the whole family. And it turns out that they've got these pictures of these fishing boats, literally with 150 people on them. And the place they could take a picture was by this pier. So there's some good pictures. When I get the pier done, I'll show you the pictures. So anyway, this is about a 3/4 size, pretty reasonably exact replica of the building on the outside. Go ahead and jump to the next slide. And it looks pretty reasonably well as a model. You see some reasonable interior detail and it's lighted. Go ahead and just jump to the next slide. There's a bunch here. One of the things I really try to do, this is on a module, and you can kind of see in the left slide that the pier is right at the end of the edge in a module where people come up really close. And one of the things I think really amazes people is to look in the window of a building and see, you know, a table with tools and magazines on it, a phone, and then there's a rack where the orders for oil for the different fishing vessels can be put in. I'm going to jump to the next one. So this whole thing, the framing and the building are all 3D printed. And the roof is actually removable. So you just kind of pick it up by the sign and you can take it off. And you see on the left is that the roof was not printed as a single print. It's printed on a filament printer, and then it's actually printed as a bunch of pieces. And I've got a slide on that in a moment. Go ahead and jump to the next one.
Wow.
So this is actually the interior. Hang on just a second. My wife. Best time to call, right? So basically what you see on the right is what it looks like. The light frame is actually printed as a frame, and it's got the wires, the lighting on the sides. Eventually there are going to be some exterior lights off of this. They're not done yet. What you see on the left is a couple of pictures of the interior before the light frame was put in. Basically the cabinets and everything inside except for the chairs were 3D printed. Go ahead and jump the next slide. So this again is another shot of the interior. This is the big cabinet at the back. And basically all of the images there were generated in PowerPoint doing a very large slide that I'd scaled based on the size of the slide down by a 4x6 photo. So by doing that, you basically create a very large high resolution image. And I actually had a local Photoshop print it for me at 600 DPI. So it's pretty accurate. And then the rest are just boxes. And I did, again, some prints for some of those for the ends. And some of the others are just printed in a smaller, again, are just printed on paper. Go ahead and jump to the next one. So this is the way this is built. Part of the reason I wanted to do this way is I'm trying to create something you almost never get on a model, which is the reality of the depth of how you frame a building. So what you see on the left is actually the parts for this building. This is O scale, so it's a building that's 3 inches by 2 inches. So it's fairly small. And part of this for me was trying to try out these techniques for some other things I'm planning to do. So what you see is the upper 4 pieces there are the 4 walls. And the way they were printed was that you have the basic framing of the walls, and then you have the diagonal supports are printed on top of that. And it's really easy to pull off the supports on the bottom of those. So they hang free and clear. So, you know, if you kind of look at this lower right picture, you can kind of see that those are behind all the other pieces. And then the lower 4 pieces are what you normally get for furring strips when you have a siding wall on. And those were made using exactly the same shape, but then where the interior is actually laid out horizontally. So when you glue those on the outside, what you get is a wall that actually has 3 layers of dimension. And that's, you know, if you look at those interior pictures, and it's hard to get a picture of this, but if you jump back a couple of pictures, I should have put these in a different order, but you kind of look at the one on the right there with the lights. And you can see there's a gap between what's essentially the stud and the wall, and then the layer on top of that. So you've got And that was the creation of depth that I was really trying to get, that you don't see normally in a model because it's very hard to create. Anyway,
Well,
go
and
ahead.
Phil, I can see how it's created with the upper center picture here, where you have those two pieces that would overlay each other, and that's where you get the real depth to it. That's incredible.
And so this is actually, the upper center is important. When you print this stuff, it actually turns out the vertical up and down gets layered because of the layers in a filament printer. But you now have a clean surface that's going to be on the interior of the building. What I do is I give them about 4 coats of what's called filler primer. Buy it in a can at Home Depot, spray them with about 4 coats of that. And what it ends up doing is it ends up building up a layer that you can actually cut away with a razor brush or the razor straw, and you actually get a wood shape on the top of these. So it's hard to see it. I didn't take a picture really up close like that. Anyway, go ahead and jump to the next one.
Well, in the finished pictures, I could see how you had wood grain in it, and I was thinking that was incredible for being printed like that.
Yeah, and that's how you get it, is by doing that. So this is the roof, and up on the upper left are the pieces. The pieces of the roof that actually have the furring that supports the aluminum. Those are actually have to be kind of matched, because they're not actually the same because of the offset of the way the joists are set up and where they hit. But they're basically laid out, and then there's actually, if you kind of notice the upper right picture, there's a jig there to hold it together, and I used that, except when I got ready to glue these, I ended up I clamped the jig into the glue point at that point. So you see on the bottom left, the roof before the aluminum siding was put on. Jump to the next one. So it's kind of built more like a model. So that's kind of the end picture of it, back on the dock and lighted. So anyway, that is it.
What kind of glue were you using, Phil?
I pretty much use canopy glue for everything.
Okay.
And the windows are microscope cover glass, which I find for these size windows, I'm not sure you could use it in HO. It'd be really a challenge. But in O, it's reasonable. And what I did was I picked the original building. The picture of the original building has fairly large windows. And I picked fairly large windows, and I mounted them higher in the wall, justifying that they use it for light. But it's predominantly so people, when they walk by, can see inside the building and see the points there. So, and by the way, all the exterior signs here and the interior signs were all done the same way on a 4x6 photo. And the Standard Oil stuff was cut out, and then the edges are all painted. The sign on the top was actually printed as 2 pieces, so it's inset where the print goes into. So it ends up looking like a pretty cool building. And the neat thing is, if you're there talking to someone, you can always reach over and take the top off and look down inside of it. So
wow. Well, it came out great, and I know your main focus was the construction and the printing and the little details, but the overall weathering and stuff looks great too. I think that roof is fantastic.
Yeah, that was chalks, just basically chalks, and then painted, because I know it's going to get handled, painted over with a dull coat.
Yeah.
So.
We have any questions for Phil about this?
Yes.
All right. Well, I know. Go ahead.
Yes. I'm assuming you're planning on putting this as a contest model.
At some point, I'll probably take this in. We have a meet coming up on Sunday. I'll probably take it in for the meet on Sunday. But it's pretty much going to get mounted to a module. At some point, I'll take the module and probably do the module. This is a 12 by 2 foot 3 inch module. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking at least you'll get on the podium.
No, it's coming out pretty cool. It's one of the things I love about modular. When you build a model railroad in your house, there are only 3 kinds of people that see it: you, your friends, and potentially visitors at an open layout tour who are model railroaders, and a bunch of people that are amazed but don't understand. Right? They're the people that, as you walk up the basement stairs, the one wife looks at the other wife and says, I understand, I'm with you. You know, and it's so the beauty of doing modules is you take them out and the public sees them. And it's really cool to have people see them and really be amazed and that, wow, you can do this as something this way. So I think it's kind of a fun part of the hobby. Anyway, that said, back to you, Greg.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Now, next up, we have Bob Farquar. And I don't know why Chris puts that in there with your picture, Bob, but
because I'm nuts.
Go ahead and tell us about your boat.
Okay, this HO scale, the from Seaport Model Works 53-foot ferry that he had to build along about a couple weeks ago. This is my version of it. I did not like the sliding ramp on the side of the ships or the boat, so I just left it off. But he mentioned a bunch of things on the build along that didn't come with the kit at all, but I just thought it came out okay anyway. I had a problem with the ladder on the very front, and I ended up using a fire escape ladder. It made of brass, and so anyway, it came out okay.
Yeah, I think it came out great.
Yeah, there you go. So that's it.
Wow. Well, it's beautiful. And so when you didn't put the sliding doors in, did you have to fill in that space?
No.
Okay,
No.
so the door just goes over that.
Exactly.
Okay.
I didn't like the look of that door, or that ramp or whatever it was.
Okay, well, I know he mentioned in his build along that this stairway was probably the hardest part of the whole build.
And yeah, I didn't mind that. I didn't like the look of it at all.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, and how did you like the rest of the build? How'd it go together?
It was great. Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, it was good.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any questions for Bob?
I just had an observation. I did get the kit from him after he did all the demonstration. So it's sitting downstairs waiting for me at some point in time to build it. And I guess I'll talk to you when I do.
All right.
Get some
Okay.
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, guys.
All right. Next up, we have Jeff Gordon. Jeff, are you there?
I'm here.
All right.
Okay, tonight's theme for me is box of sticks. I hunt around for craftsman kits, especially vintage ones that never got assembled. And that's what this is. A 30-year-old kit is supposed to build into 7 or 8 logging structures. And though I don't have a logging operation, I have a mining operation, and they used very similar structures for lodging the miners. And so this is the first of the approximately 8 buildings in that box. And it's the box, you open the box, and it's assorted sticks and some plans and a handful, very small number of cast window parts. I'm going to have to scratch or purchase some additional windows. Also didn't come with any doors. So you can see in the lower right-hand photo there, the door is entirely scratch built from the sticks as well. My Northwest short line chopper got a big workout.
So it's like a mystery box.
yeah, lots of high quality wood and a plan, and then you have to cut it all up, and you can choose to build bunk houses, a cookhouse, a dining hall, an outhouse, a company store, and there's some others as well. And so I actually cut out 2 of them at the same time, just assembled one of them here. But these are all sticks. And I supplemented the framing a little, but realized it was not going to show. And then the wood roof was so neat that after I covered it up with tar paper, I said, that's a shame. And so I weathered this one a little bit by tearing away a corner and rolling back a corner so it shows the boards. I'm thinking on one of the others, I'm going to have it being in the process of being re-roofed with new tar paper so you can see all the wood board underneath.
Nice.
But, so, and then the only other variation from the kit is, of course, I gave it a little bit more of a foundation. The logging structures would have come on big skids so they could tow them onto a flat car when they moved to the next location. The logging did that. The miners didn't. So I took the heavy wood that they used for the skids and instead turned it into a foundation. Incidentally, all of the wood staining is hunter line stains. I really like the hunter line stains, and I really like how the wood came out. I did texture the wood, so if you look at it closely, you'll see that it looks like it has some grain in it.
Yeah, I was noticing that. What scale is this, Jeff?
This is O scale.
Okay. Yeah,
So
because
the
you can
buildings
really
are-
see that grain.
Yeah, it does show.
Nice.
It's about a 5 inch long building, 20 feet long.
Wow.
And then a smoke jack out of my spare parts bin. This is the other part of the sticks. This is the hunter line trestle. Though following hunter line's instructions, I converted their straight trestle into a curved trestle.
Wow.
And modified it to follow the Rio Grande Southern prototype. So you'll see there are no diagonals between the bents. That's because the Rio Grande Southern didn't use diagonals between the bents. So it's much more open looking. And then the other thing is the little refuge platform up there is framed differently. The Rio Grande Southern had to cut it back so that it wouldn't be destroyed when they ran a snowplow over the deck of the bridge. So I followed their style. And then the other thing about this is that I was very pleased. You'll see the rails are spiked to the deck and they came out really, really nicely. The one trick for me was that rather than trying to shove the spikes into the ties, I pre-drilled each time I was going to put a spike in. I pre-drilled with a smaller bit and then pressed the in so it's tight, but it didn't. Not a single one split. And there are no guardrails on there right now, partially because, believe it or not, many of the Rio Grande Southern's bridges didn't have guardrails or either on the inside or outside. And so I may leave it just like that, or I may try and add some bridge guards on it, but I like how it shows off the deck right now.
So any complications in taking a straight trestle and building it as a curved one?
Yeah, the way I did that is the plans that come with the kit are full size. And so I photocopied the deck and then cut it into pieces so that I could, I traced, this was originally, you can see the start of scenery here. That was originally plain flat surface. I traced the existing track work, which was a consistent radius, onto a piece of paper. And then I cut apart the photocopy of the deck and taped it down to the tracing so that it followed the radius. Now, because this is ON 30 and the radiuses are kind of tight, that's a 21-inch radius turn. I had to cut it into 7 pieces to make it bend enough to get around. You know, the prototype would have used much longer runs, but that's what it took to get around a 21-inch radius curve. And what they are is 7 little tangents, and where they join, they're slightly slanted together. But as you can see, it doesn't jump out at you.
No,
it gives you a
came
nice
out very well.
continuous curve. Similarly, you can see the wooden guardrail on the edge there is cut similar to the tangents. And then the kit comes with a ton of nut bolt washer castings. So every time I cut them, it's got a nut bolt washer casting at either end of the piece of wood as well.
Well, I'm sure
Nice
it looks
kit.
just like theirs would have. Yes.
Yep, and hunter line stains again gave it a nice weathered appearance.
All right. Do we have any questions for Jeff about either of these?
Really beautiful work, Jeff. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, they did come out nice. I love seeing your stuff. All right.
Thank you.
Next up, we have John Sherwood, and I was on the YouTube feed, and John said he wasn't getting much of a signal, so I don't think John is with us. But I do have a little bit of information about what he has here. And this is in O scale, Jerry's tractor and small engine repair. I don't know whose kit it is, but unfortunately, John isn't here to talk about him, but it looks like it's a fantastic little scene, a little diorama scene.
Yeah.
And he did it on all the way around. And I would love to ask him about his dirt and stuff. We may be able to at a later time. I know he's been on the show before, but tonight he said he just didn't have very good connection, so he wasn't able to make it. But it looks like a beautiful job he did here with all the details and the texturing. So I hope sometime we can find out more about this. Next up, we have Jerry Shurgold. So Jerry, I know you're there. You're going to tell us about this shed, right?
Yes, this is a Northeastern Scale Models field office, which is going to end up on my layout at the back end. And it was a very nice little kit. This building's not very big. I made the roof removable. It does lift off. You're believe it or not, you're actually seeing both sides of this kit. They're identical. And the fascinating thing about this kit is the shingles that came with it. The shingles from Northeastern are fantastic shingles. And what I had done was using different washes and stains. I stained the side, looked like a weathered green in that, and then using pastels. And then I attacked the roof with pastels to weather it.
And Gary, what scale is this in?
This is HO.
Okay. And we have another.
Okay, this was a fun little kit to put together. It's a Bar Mills kit. David Ravelli and Company Shipping and Storage. It's one of it's actually a very small building, and I painted it. It's the siding was stained and then weathered, and then a wash of yellow acrylic was put on top of it, and little light dusting with the pastels. The deck was the same method, bit of staining. Then I went after the roof with it's tar paper roof. The nail holes aren't showing up very well, but they are there. And the it was weathered with soft pastels as well. It's quite an interesting little building. Funny thing is, I went online to look it up with Bar Mills, and they show no evidence of the kit whatsoever. So I don't know if it was a limited run.
Might have been. I got to admit, it's fascinating, that roof line over the garage door, where maybe it's cut back for a reason, who knows, but then that little part that sticks out again, I just find that very interesting.
Yeah, it was different.
Yeah.
Apparently it was Bar Mills, the owner of Bar Mills, made this kit and named it after a friend of his. So maybe it was a limited run kit, but I went online to see if I get some more information on it, and they don't even have it in their stock anymore.
Wow. Well, it's very interesting. I love the roof on both of them, as you say. Do we have any questions for Gary on either of the buildings?
I was just thinking maybe this is one, I think he did, you could pay so much money and each month you would get a new little kit sent to you. It was a one-off. Maybe it's one of those.
Oh, like a kit of the month club?
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, you should send him an email someday and say, hey, tell me about this. Where did you find it at a show or something?
No, apparently what happened a while back, a friend of mine, he sold his home and went and downsized. And what he did was he went from HO into N scale, and I bought his remaining stock. And there was a large number of kits in there that came with it. So I've been building them.
I love friends like that.
Yeah, so do I.
Gary, I built, this is Ron, Father
Yes.
Ron. I built this same kit. It was one of the first kits I built. It, along with a couple of others, they were very inexpensive. That's why I started building this one, because it didn't cost a lot of money. I think it was like $25 or $30 for the kit.
Yeah, $24.95.
It was a great kit to build. I didn't use the signs. I just built the building.
Well, I followed the signs. These are the signs that came with the building. And if you go on Bar Mill's website, they show you how to apply signs. And these were sanded on the back, thinned out, and then glued, put on them. And then what I did was did a varnishing tool and just varnished them right into the siding itself. So it looks like it's painted.
And Gary, if I missed, which kit was this? Who was the manufacturer?
This one here is a Northeastern Scale Models.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful kit. It needed a lot of bracing inside because the walls are very thin. But what really struck me about this kit is their shingles.
Yeah.
Like they're fabulous shingles. It's fabulous.
All right. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
And Father Ron, you piped in at just the right time because you're the next and last one up.
I'm ready to go.
All right.
This is the tower number 60, North Tower, North Fort Worth Tower. As I've mentioned before, I belong to the San Antonio Model Railroad Association. And one of the things that they don't have a lot of on their layout are the railroad buildings. And I thought the area of Fort Worth needed some sort of a tower on the layout. It's actually the tower and maintenance of the way shed right next to it. I built the maintenance of the way shed first. It was rather quick build. It's all out of wood. The tower itself is all out of styrene. The walls are about 80 thousandths thick, and there are actual 4 layers of 20 thousandths. The end scale architect brickwork is what's on the outside, and then it has about 3 layers of plastic, the styrene type of for sale signs on the inside to give it this firmness of it. The roof shingling, I know that you're going to be doing diamond shingling. I got to tell you, it is tedious. But I laid out the lines on the cardboard that I use, or the styrene I used underneath it, and I used the best BEST Berlinger Edgerly scale trains.
Bollinger Edgerly scale trains.
Yeah. They're shingles, and I like their shingles. They are self-adhesive. You pull the stuff off, and but once you push it down onto the plastic or cardboard, it's not coming up again. So you've got to be very careful about how you place it. This is not weathered yet. It is weathered now, and I'm about to send it down to Samara for their layout. It doesn't exactly follow the prototype. The stairs are Central Valley stairs. The actual prototype has 3 of the stringers. And I didn't have the patience to try to do wooden stairs from scratch. So I just used the Central Valley. All the windows on here are Northeastern scale lumber windows. They're injection molded plastic windows. And I cut out the mullions on the lower section. This is in 3 pieces. The roof is detachable so that it can be lit up. The upper level has an interior to it. The lower level does not. The the railings on the stairs and the platform at the top are scratch built. And the base is 80,000 styrene that I put underneath the whole thing. I used what do you call evergreen I-beams on the supports for the stairs. I think there's another picture.
Oh yeah, we've got this and
this is the back side on the left, and then this is the original picture.
Oh yeah, wow.
From the website. You can type in Tower 60 North Fort Worth, Texas, and there's a whole web page on this particular tower. Neither of these exist anymore. They were torn down. In fact, some of the tracks in the area have been pulled up. So, and I don't know when it was actually torn down, but you can see I tried to be as faithful to the model as I could. I don't believe when I took these pictures, I had the air conditioner or the electrical hookup yet on the side of the building. Obviously, the foundation in the photograph is much thicker than what I've used, but I think this will do for the display on the layout.
Oh yeah.
The hardest part for me was trying to figure out how tall this building is. And I did have a tower that Walthers produced that's a very tall tower. It turns out it's 110 millimeters tall. The model is, and I thought, well, that's a good place to start. The hardest part was figuring out the proportions, how much of the building is the lower proportion and how much is the upper. And I thought when I first did some drawings, I thought, well, maybe the lower portion is 2/3 and the top portion is 1/3, but that's not quite right. And I think I ended up with fifths, 3/5 and 2/5 is what I ended up scaling to. The hardest part was the molding under the windows in the upper section.
Yeah.
That's several different kinds of evergreen scale lumber.
Wow.
Styrene strips, trying to figure out exactly how that goes. It took me a while to figure that out. I laid out long pieces and cut them and then made them diagonal. But even after doing that, where they come together and meet on the upper level, it still didn't meet. So I had to do a lot of backfilling with putty to get it to look right. So that's the model, and it's
well, you sure nailed it. And what's the building next to it? Just a little freight house, or
it's a maintenance of the way shed. There's it's had an unusual front door. You can see that front door there on the scale photo. I guess this to give a kind of a porch to the place so the guys could get in under the rain or the snow before they got into the building.
They were thinking of their employees. How nice.
Yes. And you can see that the one angled roof on the shed there was where the motor car was put in and out. So.
Wow. Well, I know you like working in all of your different mediums, Father Ron, and you sure did on this one. It looks fantastic.
Yes.
Anyone have any questions about this?
Yeah. So in designing this, you just had to estimate the size and then work from work till it looked about right, because I think you captured the proportions very nicely. I'm scratch building a building right now, but it has a lap strake wood siding, and I was able to determine the exposure on the lap strake siding, and so count the number of boards and actually get very close to the proportion of the building from scaling off of a known dimension. Did you have anything like that, or I assume you didn't count brick courses?
I actually tried blowing up the original photo to see if I could count bricks, but that was really just impossible. When you try to blow up something that's 150 or maybe 200 DPI, it just becomes out of focus.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing was basically using paper and cardboard and cut different heights until I got the proportions, what looked like it was right. I also had to figure in the size of the windows. These are HO scale windows, but Northeastern scale lumber companies injection molded windows, you have only a few choices.
Yeah.
So I basically use the same window all the way around and use that as part of a guess about the size of the windows.
Yeah, because windows also sort of come in stock sizes, so do doors. So that is
Right.
some help. And I ran into the exact same problem, if you remember, sometime back, my interlocking tower. I ended up scratch building all of the windows out of styrene because nobody made a window that was anything like the prototype window.
Right. So this was the closest choice I could find in about the right size. And so that helped to determine the sizes as well.
So
Well,
it
it sure
captures the
came out
proportions
matching it.
really well.
Yeah. All right, do we have any more questions?
Yes, I've noticed that the air conditioner seems to move around a bit. So have you been able to find an HO scale air conditioner?
Well, actually, I did. It is a 3D printed. There were a set of 5 of them I found online, and I've used them in several other models. But there's only the one air conditioner up there on the second floor. I would imagine the first floor is just vented. If they had fans in there for the equipment, they just vented it. The first floor really doesn't look like it's something that you would work in. Basically, it's just to house the equipment.
Yeah, that's right. Typically, the lower level of an interlocking tower is full of machinery and it's not working space for people.
Yeah.
Well, it's just Texas. They probably don't need much air conditioning there.
I was lucky that the 5 air conditioners that I had purchased, this one fit the window exactly.
Wow.
I didn't have to shave it or anything to it. So you won't see it on the model because I basically took these pictures so I could get them to Chris before I had actually finished the model. I also put drain pipes on all 4 corners, and that's because if you look at this, the picture to the left, you can see that the brickwork needed some work after I put the 4 sides of the lower level together, and so the drain pipes sort of hide those mistakes there. So the little creative work there to hide the mistakes.
Well, I've seen quite a number of people, including some very good modelers. They have vines creeping up the corners of their buildings sometimes.
Yes.
All right, everyone.
I've also noticed if you go back a bit, right there. I'm assuming behind the building that's a mug.
Yes.
Yes.
As some of you know, I'm a Roman Catholic priest, so you can see that I heart my white collar job.
Yes, I saw that. That's a cute mug. All right, so we're at the end of our September My Build. The next one will be in October. And Jim, did you say you know the date for that?
October 19th.
October 19th. So if you want to get any of your pictures of models you're building, models you've built, or anything that along those lines, email them to railrunner130@hotmail.com, and Chris will get you in the October show. And I also want to mention to anybody catching this on YouTube at a later date, if you ever have any questions about any of these models, you could always get in touch with NewTracks and they can put you in touch with the modeler directly. So I think that's it. Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
Actually, one quick thing. There is a question on YouTube, speaking of. For Father Ron, Gino's Trains wants to know how long did it take, how long did this one take Father Ron?
Golly, I didn't time keep track of how much time, but I've got to say it probably totaled out to about 3 months worth of evenings.
Wow.
So I don't know what that adds up to. I also worked on Saturdays and Sundays when I wasn't busy. So it was about a month's worth of work.
Wait, you work on Sundays?
I model on Sunday.
Well, thank you so much, Father Ron, and Greg. Thank you very, very much for doing this and filling in tonight for Chris. We really do appreciate
My pleasure.
it. And to all of the people that participated and shared their modeling tonight, I really thank you so very much. This is what it was supposed to be. This is what we hoped that the My Build segment would turn into. And I couldn't be more pleased about everybody's participation and the explanations. I think what you heard tonight is why a lot of people enjoy scratch building, because it is a challenge. But the challenge is the fun of it. And figuring out the problems is the fun of it. And it can be quite stimulating, quite creative. And I think if you'll try it, you might really enjoy it. Well, this brings us pretty well close to the end of our show tonight. I know it's been a long show. I apologize for that. But I think it's been very interesting. And we've tried to present a lot of different ways that modelers can learn to improve their own modeling. So I hope that you've enjoyed it. Most importantly, I hope you've learned something from it. Hope you'll go to our website if you haven't and subscribe to it, newtracksmodeling.com. Hope that you'll go to our YouTube channel if you have not and subscribe to New Tracks Modeling. And most importantly, I hope you'll come back next time for another visit with us. I do have a surprise that I want to talk about here a little bit. We're really kind of changing the end of our show. Last time we showed a railroad, portion of a railroad video by Norm Shabaki, and it was a 3-rail O-scale layout. And it was gorgeous. And it's gotten a tremendous amount of individual views on our YouTube channel. So I've decided, that may be a great way of trying to close our show. So we had a meeting the other day and we decided we were going to call our close of our show the caboose. And then we're going to ask you all if you have a video of your model railroad that you'd like to share with the viewers, if you'll send it to us. And you can send it to me, Jim Kello, at newtracksmodeling.com. Then what we'll do is we'll take a portion of the video that you send us, maybe 2 minutes of it, and we'll run it at the end of our show. We'll give you credit for it so everybody knows whose railroad it is and who submitted it to us. And then we'll post the whole video on our website so that anybody that wants to follow up and see the whole video that you sent us can do it later on our website. So again, if you'd like to submit us something, send it to me, Jim Kello at newtracksmodeling.com. And tonight we have a video that was sent to me by Jim Allen, who is our webmaster for our shows. And I appreciate you doing it so much, Jim. But let me show you a little bit here of Jim Allen's O-scale model railroad. Thank you so very much. We appreciate you being here tonight. Please join us next Wednesday, and we'll see you then.